Okay, so this is my presentation on this article or this research that was done by a group. So it was a collaborative initiative that looked at metal air pollution in locations that were predominantly inhabited by, or it was residential locations um, where there was a really big Black and Hispanic community, and so it looked at a community-based um, part or a community and participant-based initiative to see how they could solve metal air pollution issues. So next slide, please. So metal recycling is a big industry in Houston, and they don't really have a lot of regulations about where they can set up these industries, and so a lot of times they're near residential areas, and these areas are primarily minority or socioeconomically disadvantaged areas where they have a big Black and Hispanic population. And while they do a lot of different things with metal recycling, one big thing in these areas is torch cutting, which if you guys have like seen, it's basically just people using like a torch looking thing to cut the metal. Um, so that creates a lot of toxic and heavy metal inhalable particles. And there isn't a lot of research that's done on the impact of these particles and torch cutting in residential areas, but there is a lot of research about its effects in a more industrial area. So basically for this study, the big terms that I will be using is MAPS, which is Metal Air Pollution Particle Solutions, CAB, which is Community Advisory Board, and CBPR, which is Community-Based Participatory Research. Okay, so next slide, please. So the big question was, how can you use a community-based approach to promote accessibility of information in communities and tackle environmental justice in socioeconomically disadvantaged communities? So how this research started was that the Houston Health Department got a bunch of calls from people about the air pollution in their area, as well as traffic and noise pollution. And the Houston Health Department then decided to conduct their own research and see and test the air quality, and they found that there were a lot of carcinogenic metals that were detected, as well as non-carcinogenic metals that were detected, and they realized that this was mostly due to torch cutting, but they didn't really have the necessary tools to conduct research on this, and so this is how they decided to partner with the University of Texas to to start a more research-based approach with a bunch of different organizations. So there, it was, you had the academic one, you had more community-based organizations that were a part of this as well. And so basically, this article was just trying to describe the CBPR, which again is a community-based participatory research approach, and how they decided to solve this issue using a very collaborative take. And so they had people with of different backgrounds, from community leaders to researchers with a background in epidemiology to more local leaders to kind of help combat this issue. So next slide. So there were three phases that they wanted to focus on. So the first one is the science phase, the second one is the public health action plan, and the third one is the public health, or how they evaluated their action plan. And so for their first one, they wanted to assess the possible increased health risks due to metal emitted from nearby metal recycling facilities. And how they did that was that they conducted community air monitoring, and they also gathered information from the neighborhood, like their concerns from their neighborhood, and to kind of match and see what was going on in those locations. And then for phases 2 and 3, they were just focused on developing and implementing their a multi-level evidence-based action plan to improve environmental health in these communities. So next slide. So these are the communities that they looked at. Box C and Box D show primarily communities that were that had a big Hispanic and Black population. And how they started all of this was that the CAB was formed to engage stakeholders from these affected communities, and so they decided to recruit residential leaders who had a strong connection to their community, who grew up there, who could give a more local perspective on the issue. And they structured a lot of their meetings and discussions. It was very discussion based and super low key. And so they allowed for small activities to happen. They provided study materials. They provided just a lot of information for them to get started on the issues that their communities were facing. And they also tried to look for ways to make their board more accessible and more visible to their target communities. And so a big initiative that they took was that all the information that they found, they tried to, present their information in Spanish as well, so they could cater to their Hispanic population. And they made decisions on what information was to be included in their neighborhood specific reports and when to notify public of what information they find. And so basically what this entire article looked at was that by finding a more, can you go to the next slide? So these were their principles and these were their main objective. And what this research was looking at was trying to see how they as a community, by looking at different, by including different people of different backgrounds, they can make sure that their community's voices are heard. And they had their two big principles that they achieved, which was they wanted to recognize their community as a unit of identity. So they wanted to include different kinds of groups with different backgrounds to brainstorm and work through their problems, making sure to get their local inputs and perspectives throughout the way, and then also equal partnership and shared responsibility in all phases of their research process. So the research team met regularly. It wasn't just the PI that was doing the work. And they were able to collaborate on all their projects, and full participation was encouraged. And so that's what they were able to achieve. So basically, to conclude, they found out that using a CBPR approach kind of showed a positive model that can be used to create a more whole-rounded initiative that allowed for a diverse group of partners to sort of come together and work on an issue. And it wasn't only looking at the issue from a scientific perspective or a regional perspective, but looked at it from a more, again, like a whole rounded perspective. The end. And so they were basically able to gain their neighborhoods' perspectives and voices and improve their environmental health in their neighborhoods. The end.
Yay.
Very nice. Oh, I love it. You guys are doing so good so far. Oh, sorry, Nandu, I forgot to, I didn't switch the last two slides. Damn. Okay, well, I'm gonna share screen really quick. Oh, it's still recording. Oops. All right, I'll try to cut that out of the middle. And I'll just play the last two slides.